So I think awareness is the first step because it helps you assess what's actually happening. It helps you assess the situation, your thoughts, and then where you play a role. Okay, so for example, if someone is implying to you that you're responsible for something that you don't feel like you're responsible for, two things need to happen. Let's say it's a work situation and you're like, well, hold on. Is there a reason that I was selected to do this? And don't you think this is a little bit out of my scope? If you think that, So the second the person that's implying that notices that you are
asking questions,
then there's going to be an immediate need for, okay, there's something going on here. That you already have built the first line of defense in your boundary.
Yeah.
In that moment of you asking that question. Asking that question is not disrespectful. Asking that question is not dishonorable. It's not you going against your job. It's you wanting to genuinely know, hey, talk to me about, how did you come to the, is this an opportunity for me because of a promotion? Talk to me about what your thought process is here. If it comes to family members, it gets difficult because there's a lot more emotions involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so when someone's implying something to you, in my rebellious years, I remember my dad used to say stuff to me. Well, you need to do this. I'm like, no, you're the parent. I don't have any kids. It's disrespectful, but in your frustration of trying to communicate something, I was like, I would say it's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility. And so you have to understand that and you have to be okay with that. And then that false sense of responsibility they're trying to put on you gets broken because it doesn't control you anymore.
That's what I was thinking is in that kind of situation, you're trying to control things instead of dealing with maybe a difficult conversation, and the outcome is not good. Yeah. It's just not.
And and I talked to my dad about it then, and I remember him saying to me, he goes, well, I just felt like he would listen to your advice more than he'd listen to mine. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he hates me. Let's not, I don't think that's going to work, So it's not always meant to control you either. Some people genuinely think this is a better avenue, or maybe you are a better person to do something. So it's I always try not to judge people's intentions. I just try to help understand where I'm at with it and what's healthy for me. I don't know what their intentions are. We can't always assume it's negative. Could be, and if they've come out of some type of narcissistic type of environment in their previous, in their young adulthood or whatever, it might look normal for them. Or if those same expectations were put on them, they're going to throw them on you because they think it's completely normal. Right. So it's just a matter of, I think, being aware and then really assessing. Okay. Now, are some people like, well, I'll just do it. I think it's easier to do it than have a conversation about it. There's a lot of people that do it that way. That's fine if you can manage it. Yeah. But what happens with that situation is when it's not communicated, I see most people reach a brink and then explode. Yeah.
I think, speaking for myself, I can certainly see that has happened, especially when it comes to a family situation or someone that's close to you. And there's emotions involved for sure. And so it's hard to try to set those first boundaries. And I think once they are established, it's almost like they don't know how to respect those boundaries. So then the communication looks completely different. And so I also think that as you navigate that, you have to be okay with the relationship and the communication shifting.
Yes, because there can be a moment of awkwardness. When the relationship shifts from you setting the boundary, everybody knows this. There's two things that happen. They either cut you off. Yep. Oh, you're setting boundaries? We're done. They'll cut you off. Or two, it's awkward because the way they used to talk to you, they can't talk to you anymore. Things they used to say to you, they can't say. And they're not getting the benefit of using you anymore. Yeah. So that relationship changes. And it's hurtful because then you could, well, I thought this person loved me, but obviously they don't love me. They just benefited from me. So that's why they were around. So that can be hurtful, and you have to process that. And so, it was the only type of relationship you had with them, the codependency. And that's the other issue with taking on false responsibility. There's a false codependency that's that's there that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And so they're dependent. Well, I mean, what are we going to do if you don't? Like, I see people not leave and move because they feel pressured to stay in a town because they need to help support.
With a family member.
I see people not pick professions or careers and opportunities because they're responsible to care for the family or the grandparents, or you're leaving, we're in this situation. Like, now their situation is your situation.
Yeah.
You know, and so what you see is people say no to big yeses that they probably should be saying, you know, and I've seen the opposite. I've seen moms like, I want you out of here as soon as you get out of high school. I don't want you staying in this place. I don't want you in this town.
Yeah.
Go, run, you know, go do everything you can do. I've seen the opposite too, you know. So it's just being self-aware of it, then learning how are you going to draw the boundaries. For some people draw quick boundaries fast. Some people do that.
Yeah.
And if that's what you need, do it.
I think it depends on what it is, right? And whatever that boundary is. For me, this is just, it's a hard subject to talk about because there's been some recent things in my own life that's just like, I don't know how to navigate it, you know, like, and I might even get emotional talking about it. It's hard. It's hard to talk about. But like when you draw a boundary and you say, hey, this is what I need from you, and then they don't know how to do that, it's just completely cut off. And what do? You still go on pursuing yourself and creating healthier boundaries so that you can be in a healthier place. But sometimes those relationships change. Sometimes the communication changes. And, you know, you would hope that the other side would have an understanding and a love and a respect for you, but that's not always the case. Well, it's just not.
Well, it depends on what they bonded over.
Yeah.
Okay? So what I mean by that is this. I've had friends of mine who they all had marriage issues. Okay. So they all get together and bash their husbands.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not saying it's not valid either. Like, there were some serious issues there. Like, I remember thinking, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's not valid, but I remember one of the girls decided her and her husband wanted to go to marriage counseling. They wanted to work it out.
Yeah.
And what I recognized, you know, and I wasn't in the immediate circle. I was just kind of on the outside a little bit, you know, catching here and there. But I remember that desire for her to get to marriage counseling. And so what it did is she removed, and she told me this, I had to remove myself from that friend group. And I was like, well, why? Like, they're upset with you. Like, you kind of like dropped off the face of the earth. And she's like, well, they're always bashing their husbands. And she's like, I don't want to come and bash my husbands. I'm trying to think about him differently.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
The environment has to change.
That makes sense. And, you know, she would call me and be like, you guys want to do a double date? And I'm like, no. I want to be like, no, my husband doesn't like your husband. But I couldn't say that. So, like, you know, so she's trying to get around, but I understand what she's doing. She's trying to get around healthier marriages or, you know, healthier situations. And she's like, it's not that I don't want to be friends with them. All we do is we talk about the same thing. So their misery kept them together in a friendship. Yeah. But they were not able to be happy for her when she started, you know, wanting to have a healthier marriage. And that her husband wanted it too. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so I just saw that dynamic shift. And if I remember correctly, they all went to like elementary school, middle school, and high school.
They were together a long time.
And they went to college together, and they were all each other's bridesmaids. Like, it was like well,
they all took it so personal, I'm sure, when she decided to draw some of those boundaries.
Yes. But, and she thought it was going to, like, hey, this is temporary. I just want to get my marriage together. Yeah. I want to salvage it. And then she was going to make a comeback. Yeah. But what she realized is she outgrew them. Yeah. And like, she couldn't make a comeback because they didn't accept the healthy her. They liked the broken her. Yeah. The broken her is where they overlapped in interest. You know? So it's like, that's the dangerous part. And that doesn't mean they're bad people. They're just broken people. Yeah. And I
mean, we all have some level of brokenness. Yes. I mean, we do. We're human beings.
And it's easy to bond over the brokenness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where people grow out, and then people get offended. But it's like, you have to be, and I would tell the other girls, I'm like, guys, she's working on a marriage. Yeah. Whatever it takes, if that's her priority, you have to at least respect the priority that she's making.
Yeah. And you said something about outgrowing. Right? If you've outgrown a friendship, or if you've outgrown a season of your life, when you've outgrown something, you're kind of waking up and making changes. You're waking up and realizing, like, hey, I want this to look different. So I'm going to be intentional about the boundaries. I'm going to be intentional about the environment or the people I'm around. And sometimes growing comes with growing pains. It just does. And it doesn't make it easy. But if you are on this path to be healthy and whole in your marriage, in this case, then you need to do what it takes to accomplish that.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any fault or wrong in doing that.
Priorities change, right? Like my expectation, my best friend, we went to college together. We were roommates, moved and did all the things. And when she had a baby, my expectation of her as a friend will not remain the same now that she's a mother. Does that make sense? Meaning time-wise, holiday-wise, like anything. Like that expectation, mine has to shift out of respect for her new positioning as a mom. I'm not a good friend if I don't do that.
Yeah.
You know? So, and that doesn't mean like our friendship ends. It's just, it changes.
Yeah.
Because priorities change. And so like I think people need to respect other people's boundaries and where they're trying to go. Yeah.
When you talk about this, reminds me of a scenario with a friend that I had years ago. And, you know, she had a baby much earlier than I did. I was not in a healthy place in my life. I was in a very broken place. And so I was not there for her in what she had hoped or expected, I'm sure. And I didn't know, I was dealing with so much at the time in my life. I did not know how to be there for her at all. And it hindered the relationship 100%. And things never got back to where they were. She grew in a season that I was not in. And I had to learn how to cope with that. And, you know, it's like those kinds of things that happen in life. I think it's hard to navigate, but it's a reality of us being human beings and growing and being in different seasons of life. There can still be a love and a respect for an individual, even if they're in a different place. You know what I mean?
And be okay with mourning the previous relationship and how relationships do change. And it wasn't how it used to be. I do not expect any of my friends now that I have to behave like my friends when I was in college. Does that make sense?
Hopefully we're growing and changing.
Yes, hopefully we are. And so for people who take on false responsibility, these are the difficulties that happen. They feel like, and you'll see it. And once they break off that false responsibility mindset and they're aware, all their friends are gone, all the family's mad. Like there's just so much, you know, and everyone's a critic of them and what they're doing in their life choices. Like you see it happen. Yeah. And it's like, well, I feel like they're thriving. They're like, oh, she doesn't care about us anymore. And I'm like, no, but she needs to care about her. You know what I mean? So it's just a very interesting dynamic. And I just see that cycle a lot, the false sense of responsibility. Yeah. And it hinders people all the way around in every area. It hinders them in other relationships.
Absolutely.
You know, I've seen false sense of responsibility stop people from getting married and dating. Because it's that heavy. Yeah. Like they can't even imagine in their mind, oh, can I go on a date? Like, do I have time to? Can I add another person in my life? And will I have to take care of this person too? Yeah. So people who
see it as a burden.
Yeah. So people who take on false responsibility for a long period of their life probably don't even want to get married, have kids, right, or do anything because they've taken on such a burden for such a long period of their life. They just don't want anything to do with it. It's a normal response to have.
Or even in the workplace too, like you're taking on so much, you get burnt out. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're taking on everybody's stuff because they're not managing their time, or maybe they do have some healthy boundaries and you're just trying to take it all for the team and you're burnt out. That's not healthy. I
saw this guy on TikTok. He's a neurosurgeon from Colombia. Yeah. I guess decided to quit his job and go live in the mountains of Nepal. I mean, and this is amazing. Well, no, he was just saying he was burned out. Yeah. He went to the level of complete burnout. Wow. It had to be completely drastic of a change. Wow. That he left the country, left his family.
Oh my God. Like his whole family?
Like he just left. Like, I don't think he was married or anything. Okay, yeah. But like, you know, his parents and like his, whoever was there, he just left everybody.
They all probably thought he was crazy for sure.
Well, I'm sure.
He needed like a reset.
Yes. And so he just like, I'm in the mountains now. I love my life. And, you know, and I'm just like, buddy, like, and not to lie, I saw the video. I was like, the mountains look pretty cool. Like, you know, like and he told me, he's like, it's a simplified life. And so mentally, that's where it's, for him, like it just created a safe place. And it was just like, wow, these are the extremes of not having hard conversations with people that you need to have conversations with, you know? And so I think it's going to be interesting to see, if people are afraid. Adults are afraid. People are afraid to have tough conversations.
Yeah.
People are afraid to draw boundaries, especially the ones that protect them.
Yeah.
You know, people think that's selfish. And so people don't want to do it. But I think for you to thrive, for you to fulfill your dreams, for you to fulfill the things that you've wanted to do and the desires that you have in your heart, there is a healthy place of doing that.
Yeah.
And understanding what that looks like. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it happens in one day of a session. Because remember, even though
over time,
even though you're changing, does not mean the other person is.
Yeah. And sometimes I think as we change, we kind of expect there to be an understanding as we grow and change. And that's just not always the case.
Yeah. Be 100% okay that the person that has been putting false responsibility on you will continue to do so and will never stop. You have to be aware of that. But you have to be mentally in a resolve where you're like, yeah, you can attempt that, but I'm not gonna accept that. Does that make sense? So, because that person can be unhealthy enough that they continue to do it. They're narcissistic enough that they're going to continue to do it.
Right. You're breaking your cycle, but that doesn't mean that's going to break everyone else's cycle.
And so what people do, that's why people cut off family members or, people, because they're like, it's just too toxic because they keep hearing the same thing. But the healthy part of that is being around the toxicity and being like, yeah, it's not going to affect me. I know what you're doing. I know the behavior. I know what you're doing, and it's not going to affect me. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Because your
emotions are involved, especially if it's family or close friends, or like you said, people that have supported you in those different ways.
Yeah. And if you've always done it, their expectation is you're going to continue doing it. So there's a shock on their part when you're like, no, I don't want to do that. And it's just like,
well, and they're like, who is this new person?
Yeah.
Who is this new Taryn? Who is this new Julie in this season? Like they don't know how to navigate it.
Sure. And so I think you just have to be aware of all those things, and like everybody, so I had a person tell me, well, I can't do that because I love my family and I want to be around them. I was like, you don't have to cut out your family.
Yeah.
You just draw the boundary, you just draw, they're recent immigrants to America. So very rooted in their culture, and the gender role is very, very pushed in their family.
Yeah.
And so she can't imagine a life without her family, and she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I don't expect anybody to, but it's still okay to draw boundaries in some areas.
Absolutely.
And so I would tell her, I was like, you can still draw the boundary. It doesn't require you completely cutting them off.
Yeah.
And pick and choose. There might be some things that you actually don't mind doing, and it won't be a big sacrifice to you or doesn't hinder you in any way. And so I just tell people, just assess the situation, really understand what your role is. If you can help. If you can help people, help them. But if you're dealing with somebody who's not going to receive help and someone's just throwing another responsibility onto you, hey, this is your responsibility, you need to step away and really assess, like, what's my role in this and what do I really need to do?
Yeah, when you're talking about my role, I think things shift and change as you understand who you are, like your role as an individual, like who you are in your identity as a mom, as a daughter, as a wife, as a colleague. Like, what is your role? What is your identity? And I think when you can have a good understanding and really self-reflect, that's going to help you determine what those boundaries need to look like. And
the boundaries can change in different seasons of your life too.
Yeah.
You maybe have more capacity in one season and you just don't have enough capacity in the next. And if a boundary is set in a certain season, be okay with that too.
Yeah.
Hey, this was my previous boundary, but right now this is what's happening and this is everything that's on my plate. So therefore, I don't have the capacity for this.
Yeah. It's so refreshing. Like when you have those kind of conversations with people that will reach out and like, hey, I need your help with this, or can you, consider doing this? Do you have the capacity? Like, I know you've got a lot going on. It's almost like there's such a respect for the relationship there. It's like a breath of fresh air when you have something like that versus someone who's trying to imply, false responsibilities that you need to take on. It's just received completely different.
It is.